Hello, everyone. Welcome to my first blab. That's Chris, aka Autistic, not weird. Awesome sauce.
Yep.
Good
to meet you at last.
Good to meet you at last. See you in a couple of weeks. Right, me and Chris.
Down in Cardiff.
A couple of weeks. Come to Cardiff and Whitchurch. Come see us. We'll share details of that. We'll share details of that afterwards. Right. We've got 3 discussion points to do with autism today. They basically, 3 discussion points. The first one is quite a weird one because I have this issue all the time on my page about people telling me I get things wrong, but they seem to forget I only offer my perspective. So Chris, what is probably a tricky question. What is your definition of autism?
When people ask me what actually is autism, it's a tricky thing to answer because from my perspective, it's like you're being asked, so what is being a human? And when you ask something like that, your mind gets flooded with all of these things that it means to be a person. And well, how on earth do you even answer that? But what I do, I just give the straight literal definition. It's a social development disorder which is characterized by and then you run off the list of things that obviously don't apply to everyone with autism, but kind of deal with the majority. And then describe how it affects me. For example, I do have the maths thing and the memory thing, but obviously don't take that as a given because not everyone has it.
I don't.
Surprisingly few viewers have. I think I just got the luck of the draw on that one. But to make up for it, I do have the social awkwardness and I speak sarcasm as a second language, but it might take an extra second for me to realise it, which isn't very long, except in conversation, to be fair. An extra second or two can come across as a bit of a long time, and if you're the last person to get the joke, then but I do also have the anxiety thing, but in all honesty, I don't think that was planted here by autism. I think that's just life experience rather than, in fact, read a quote in Neurotribes by Steve Silverman where he said, yeah, but I'm less than that, but already uncovered loads of gems. It's and the one I'm thinking of is when he said, having talked to lots of adults on the autism spectrum, it seemed that a lot of the issues they had, which were traditionally assigned to their autism, weren't actually because of their autism. It was because of the way that they had been treated by other people. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I don't believe I'm a naturally anxious person, but because of life experiences, that's basically been done to me. But yes, saying that, yeah, he is this and that because of his autism, when really it's just the way that person's been treated. It's the same as me, like, chopping a hand off and then saying, oh, poor you were born with one hand.
That's true. Autism depends on what mood I'm in, my definition. Depends on what mood I'm in. If I'm in a bad mood, you'll get the answer. When someone says, what's autism, you'll get the answer. It's really complicated. And then I'll walk off.
This is Coke, not wine.
Yeah, right. Or I will say it's a different way of thinking. I think that's the only... Thank you. It's the only way I've explained it, really. There's no point in going, I don't want to bore someone. I only tell people who want to hear about it at the end of the day. I mean, I did my show the other day. It got about 70 people turned up. They wanted to know about it. So I was going to tell them. I'm not going to walk up to them in the street and start telling them about it. I'm not, knocking your door saying, this is autism. I'm not doing that. I'm only going to tell people who want
an evangelist.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be an autism evangelist. No, I'm not going to knock off.
That's a tricky thing because often the people who we wouldn't walk up to in the street and start preaching the word of autism, often they're kind of the first people who kind of need to know about it. These are the people with, for example, autistic grandchildren who, they're not autistic. We never had it in my day and things like that. I do occasionally wonder whether we're, in some sense, preaching to the choir when we talk about autism to those already affected by it. I know we're going to come to the advocacy subject in a bit, but I think an important thing about what we should be doing is guiding those who are either on the autism spectrum or otherwise affected by autism, but raising awareness among those who aren't affected by it. And it is kind of tricky to do both at the same time, but it is very important.
Absolutely. Difficult question. Difficult. Oh, we got a few. Just sorry, Chris. We've had a few new people join. As I'll just say, hello. Comment as Chris. You made up to my right. There is a thing where people can chat. Please tell us your questions. Keep them coming in because we'll answer as we go. Awesome. We've just been discussing our definitions of autism. If you have one of yourself, put it in there. Let us know if this is a late replay on a YouTube channel. Comment below. We'll tell you. We'll reply to it. Okay, awesome source. Next question is, well, it's not a question, it's a statement. It's a title of a really long essay that we would probably love to write, Chris. But it basically is the importance of autism advocacy, or the importance of advocacy in general, to be fair. It's what we're doing is so important. I genuinely believe this is like, it feels like, sometimes you feel like Martin Luther King. Like you feel like you're on the cusp of a revolution. I don't know how you see it. I genuinely believe I hit a wave of a revolution when I started. I don't know how you see it.
I see exactly what you mean in the sense that we're kind of at this crossroads with autism awareness. We're at the stage where basically everyone has heard of autism, but not everyone understands exactly what it is. And I often compare autism awareness today to what mental health awareness was about 10, 20 years ago, when people thought that depression was just being sad all the time and there was no difference between being anxious and having anxiety and so on. And nowadays, people know a lot more about that. And the only reason that people do know more about it is because a lot of people were very brave and said, you know what, stuff it, I'm going to tell the world what it's like to have depression and what it's like to have anxiety. And that's why more people know about it today. And more people are beginning to do that about autism, whether they're parents of autistic children, whether they're autistic adults like ourselves. It's a really important time for autism awareness.
Apologies, Chris, we've had a question. Do you have any advice for parents as to how we can best advocate our kids on the spectrum? Excuse me, especially with those who have kids who are non-verbal. Personally, I don't think a non-verbal autistic would want to go to a talk on autism. Well, they might, but I don't think they'd take everything in as much. They might take something in, but they won't take everything in. For a non-verbal, I think it's more of a parenting thing. Does that make sense to you, Chris? Because I think if the communication at that point, because if they're unable to actually express themselves communicatively, they're not going to be able to take it in. And that's what people get confused with communication. It's about taking it in and sharing it. If that makes sense to you. And I think when in regards to non-verbal, it's about parent advocates. There are autism parent advocates out there. There are really famous ones, like the mother of Luke Jackson is probably one of the most famous. But advocates for your kids, I think there's all sorts going. There's all sorts. There's that new Sesame Street thing, which I'm sure you're aware of. I think I try to make my stuff as accessible as possible by keeping it simple. I don't use medical words, and if I do, I give a definition very simply. But I try and make my stuff accessible by putting it on YouTube. Everyone goes on YouTube. Everyone, kids, adults, everyone. That's how I make it for kids. I don't know about you, Chris, because you write complex articles, which are very good. But then how would you go about it? Like, what's your...
Before I answer this, I'll say straight away that I'm not a parent. I've worked with children at the very severe end of the autism spectrum. I've worked with non-verbal kids and so on. But I could talk about the teaching thing, but not necessarily about the parenting thing. But one thing that I honestly believe helps, and I say this obviously with no knowledge about the practicalities of it, but be seen in public as much as possible. When I worked at a special school, we very often took the teenagers into town just to have lunch at local restaurants, then went back. This is in the middle of the school day. And that was important the main reason it was important was because it gave children life experience of seeing the world outside of the house, outside of the school. And we can talk about schools there to educate, but a big part of education is actual life experience, and that's the biggest reason why why it was so important to take these kids into town. One side effect of that was that the public got to see that, wow, non-verbal autistic children do exist. I mean, in the last article I wrote, I referenced the fact that I didn't meet a child with noticeable special needs until I was 10. And I saw that this lad with Down syndrome, and it was quite an eye-opener, because obviously I'd gone for 10 years without ever seeing a child who wasn't mainstream, for example, and this gave me the impression that, wow, disabled children must be a really, really rare thing, and obviously it's not, and we're getting more and more aware of that now. But like I said, I don't know the whole practicalities about how easy you may or may not find it taking kids out in public, but the more they can be seen by the people, then maybe given time, the better off will be. And obviously the difficulty of that, or the fear that comes with that, is what if I get the stares, and what if I get people touching and so on. And yeah, I'm not going to pretend that that doesn't happen. I didn't see it happen whilst I was out with the kids that I worked with, but well, it does sometimes happen anyway. But one suggestion that there was made in a conversation I was in recently is, well, why not carry cards when you're going out saying, my child has autism, it affects him like this, and so on. And yeah, the conversation I had came from hearing a talk on Radio Nottingham about what to do if your child's having a difficult time in public. And the parent of an autistic child went on and suggested carrying these cards and handing them to anyone who made a comment and so on. And the usual response was, "Oh, wow, okay, I'm really sorry. Must have judgment there." So there is a chance of that working. Although notice you're shaking your head a bit. What are you thinking?
I think it's disgraceful.
Really?
I think if you're having a meltdown in public, or should you make an excuse for anyone? As an adult, if I had a meltdown in public, I would not be giving out cards telling people, "Oh, pity me because I've got this." I think it's disgraceful. I think at the end of the day, it's not down to the parent. I don't think it's down to the parent to tell people. I think, honest to God, I think people should mind their own business. Because if I see a child padding, I don't think, "Oh, that kid's a little beep, whatever." I think, "Oh, what's going on? Never mind, move on." I just don't. It's at the end of the day, it's not your business. That's what I genuinely think. I get where you're coming from. It's like, what's next? What's next? What's the next thing? Labeling people in that way is what the Nazis did to Jewish people, and I don't agree with it at all. I just do not. To me, it feels like I'm being named and shamed for that. But that's what it feels like, and I would not feel comfortable. I would never ever make it. If someone come up to me and made a smarmy comment about my kid kicking off, I'd say, "All right then, show me how to deal with it. Go on, you're clearly an expert. Deal with it. You tell me how easy it is." If that's how I see it. But I agree with. But I see where you're coming from. I can see where that parent's coming from. Embarrassed.
Oh, we've just had a question.
Oh, we've got one from Bursting Autism. We've got a couple from her. Okay. Bursting Autism says, "Yes, that's what I'm asking. How can we, the parents, best advocate?" My answer: do what my mum did. My mum had no idea I was autistic until about 15, 16. All her concept was that something's up. That's her way of thinking, or something's not right. Well, that's her way of thinking. Then she focused on me. She didn't go Googling stuff, because it wasn't that available. She couldn't go, it wasn't accessible like it was these days. So she had to concentrate on the fact that there was something not right, or not 100% like everybody else. So she just focused on me. And by doing that, you can honestly be more positive. That's what I think. That's why I get stressed out at schools. They go, "What can we do?" I said, forget the books, forget the Googling, just focus on the kids.
How about getting to know the person?
Exactly.
You know what? Go on.
Oh, I used to be a support worker. I never read their files. The only time I read their one file once was because the lad was diabetic, and I wanted to know the dose.
If it's medical need, then
yeah, the medical need. Autism, I don't read the file. I don't care, because what he did at the age of 12 is irrelevant to what he's going to do at the age of 19 when I was working. So I just kind of went with it. I just went, okay, let's get to know him. I mean, at specialist schools, they spend the first term just bonding. They don't learn any. They just bond for like a whole term.
Yeah, like I often think about my first experience in special education. It's kind of how naive I was back then. When I first, bear in mind that I was, I don't know, early 20s at the time, never worked with severely autistic people before. I didn't even know I was autistic myself. I thought, you know what, the more I can learn about the conditions that these guys have, the better off, the better I'll get to know them. And then a few years down the line, when I started working full-time in a special school, I suddenly realized, you know what, get to know them as people, and then you'll get to know their needs better. I mean,
that's what they are. They're people. Yeah. They're not disabled. They're people.
Yeah, I often say when I give my talks that we use the phrase, once you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism, and people like fly flags with that phrase from the rooftops and everything. But you'll still get people saying, don't do this if a person has autism, autistic people don't like this, and so on. I mean, there's really a fine balance between noticing what people on the autism spectrum have in common, whilst actually not forgetting that they are individuals.
This is why advocacy is so important, because I mean, like, parents just freak out. Like, they go, their son's got Asperger's, say, for example, and then they see me or you have a chat in front of 100 people or whatever, or chat with some people or do a video, and they think, oh my God, my son can do it. And I'm like, of course he bloody can.
Oh, yeah. You know what?
It's just like, of course he can live in a house. Anyone can live in a house. Of course he can. He may need more help than most, but he can do it. No.
Something that was quite an eye-opener for me. Just after Christmas, I requested paper copies of these psychologist reports written about me when I was a child, because I read the one from when I was 10, the one that listed all of the symptoms of Asperger's syndrome, but it was 1995, so didn't get the diagnosis because they didn't know much about it at the time. So they listed all the symptoms, and you know what they wrote down? Photo before. They wrote down slightly odd personality. That was actually written down by a professional psychologist. I think I can laugh at that because
slightly odd personalities, I can tell you that.
So what was that?
I said I've met some neurotypicals who are slightly odd personalities.
You know what? Have you ever met a completely normal person? In fact, have you ever met a person who claims to be completely normal? Everyone likes to say, "Oh, well, I'm just slightly odd. I'm a little bit weird." But you know what? I'm the guy who literally has it in writing.
Yeah. Normal doesn't exist. What is normal? Yeah. I always say, what's the thing that went a bit viral? Had about 50 shares or something. It said, what is normal? Normal is difference. If everyone was the same, you'd find that weird. Trust me.
Yeah.
If like you woke up and everyone was exactly like you would shit yourself. Excuse the French, but you would.
Anyway, I'm afraid I've meandered away from the point I was going to make. I requested the paper copies of these things, and from when I was 4, and I read through this letter that was written about me back in 1989, so 4 years, 3 months old. It was quite hurtful, really. It said things like, socially in some way functions at the 3-year level, and there was one bit that said, use of expressive language functions at the 2.5-year level. I was nearly 4.5 by this point, so I was like half my life behind in terms of where I was supposed to be. And I read this, I was thinking, I had to remind myself, you know what, this boy who functions like a toddler did become a primary school teacher, and this guy with the expressive language skills of a 2.5-year-old is now doing a master's in creative writing. And I don't normally post things like that on the internet because I don't want to go like, oh, woe is me, my life is awful, and things like that. But
and the internet likes it when people do that.
Yeah, but I was thinking, you know what? I'm reading this letter, I'm thinking there'll be thousands of parents out there who are reading the exact words, like functions like a 2.5-year-old, this and the other, and they'll be bloody worried. They might be thinking,
oh, it's scary.
They'll also have the word autism attached to it, which my parents didn't, but even those who don't know anything about autism know that it's supposed to be bad. So if you suddenly realize that your child is autistic and functions like a 2.5-year-old, I thought, you know what, I better actually post that and tell them that it was written about me. Just let people know that just because that stuff's written about your child doesn't mean that they can't get a maths degree.
Exactly. It's silly. It's all about development. They'll get there.
Yeah.
What I want to say, I want to go back to the importance of advocacy, because we've got a few females on the. We've got quite a lot of. Got some females on our feed, and I think it's important to talk about the importance of advocacy. All the advocates that I know, apart from one, are male. I've only met one female autism advocate. I'm aware of others, but I've only met one, and that's Sarah Hendricks, amazing woman. It's the importance of advocacy in autism. Obviously, we're all blokes, and we're doing a event where it's 3 blokes. What about women? It's just so much more important. Well, it's just as important, sorry, but I think females, it's just you don't get. I've not really found a female other than Sarah Hendricks who goes into the depth we do on stuff, and that's, I think we need that as much or more. What's your opinion on like the female advocacy?
Well, you know that this statistic that there are supposed to be 5 times as many autistic males than females. So, honestly, I don't believe that. I can believe it that there are more males than females, but 5 times as many, unless it's like specifically linked with the Y chromosome or something biological I can't quite understand. I think honestly, when people wrote the rule book and the diagnostic criteria, they based it on what they already knew about autism, and what they already knew about autism, they had just seen in boys who are traditionally speaking louder and more. I hate using this phrase, but noticeably autistic than girls are. So the reason we have fewer diagnosed girls is simply because they're not matching the boys' set of criteria. So all too often they go unnoticed.
Simon Baron-Cohen nailed it. Absolutely nails it. He believes there are 3 types of brains. Male, female, autistic, yeah? Male brain he says are very systematic, so they're very logical.
Yeah.
And they do one task at a time, and it's very like that. Females, it's more empathic, so they'll think more of emotions necessarily than facts like men would. That makes sense? I know I'm generalizing, don't be offensive, but this is a theory. Third one is autistic, and they call that over systematic, which basically means it's a male brain turned up to 11. And that's why he believes more boys are diagnosed, because it's basically a male brain, but exaggerated. And I can see where he's coming from, because and Sarah Hendricks always talks about the difference between men and women. Like she'll say like a man, she's obviously married to an autistic male, and like men tend to create their own little world, and they stay within that little world. And when new things are introduced, they'll say no, and then go away and whatever. Whereas women with anxiety may say yes, keep saying yes and yes and yes until they just go bang. And what you presented me with was something that looks like a mental illness. Like when a girl comes up to me and says, "My anxiety's up here," I think, "You're autistic." I know it sounds bad, but that's what I'm like. That makes sense to you?
It does.
Sorry, I've blown your mind.
I had the sentence in my head. It just left when
what would the female brain?
I think there are loads of women on the autism spectrum who have absolutely no idea that they are on the autism spectrum, and in many cases will have been told they're not on the autism spectrum. In fact, I've heard people who have been told, well, you can't because the autism spectrum only affects boys, and then they've ended up believing that person and then going years and years without the diagnosis and the support that comes with it.
I find a lot of women get diagnosed in their 30s. And
a lot of people tend to get diagnosed once their children are diagnosed.
Interesting, yeah. Interesting that. Yeah, a friend of mine has got 2 autistic children, and she got diagnosed just recently. Because she started seeing stuff, and I went, "Come on, you're autistic." She started thinking, like, "Why am I doing this? Why do I think this?" Because you're autistic. Because you're autistic. Because you think like me. You're doing what I do. Just get yourself diagnosed. She did. And she found out. So, it's just, Fascinating. Right. The importance of advocacy. That was a quite in-depth conversation, Sir Chris. I enjoyed that. We probably went off topic. We will do.
Oh, naturally, because this is based on a conversation, and from what I know about socializing, conversations do tend to go in directions that you don't want them to go.
Exactly.
But you know, as long as the conversation's valuable, then fair enough.
Imagination is something I could literally go on all day about because it's my biggest flaw on the triad of impairments. Right, anyway, third question. Okay, guys, we're on our final talking point of the evening. If you have questions, keep them coming through. If we have time, we might answer some of yours at the end. The final thing is the future of advocacy, the future of how we raise the autism awareness. I want to hear what you think about the future.
I don't think the job is ever going to be done. I think the job is just going to evolve. For example, in the 1980s, autism advocacy was just making sure that people had heard of autism. Then we reached a point where everyone had heard of autism. Like, was the job done? Well, obviously, no, it wasn't. So now that the job is making sure that people know what autism looks like. And once we manage some of that, then we start focusing on, okay, we've got to make people aware that it affects some people really severely, and it might affect some people, actually some people in a pretty positive way. I actually think it's affected me in quite a positive way. But the step after that, I don't know. I mean, we talk about raising awareness of autism as if it's this linear journey that we're supposed to go on, that there'll come a point where the last person is made autism aware and, wow, the world will be a better place. And, well, yeah, the world will be a better place the more we talk about it. But I don't think the journey is ever going to be done. I think that it will just evolve and there'll be something new that we need to make people aware of. And that'll be based on things that we discover between now and then as well. That the reason we went from this 80s advocacy to modern day advocacy is because nowadays we know that people like you and me are affected by it, and the more we learn about it, the more there is to teach other people.
I think we've got comments here. I burst in autism at Channel Boredom. They've come out. I burst in autism says we're at the point of acceptance and inclusion. I think we're not quite there yet. We're getting there, but I think Channel Boredom below has said it's time for autism understanding, and I personally am. I think we're there. This is it now. I think this is what we're for. What advocacy is for. It's not about, anyone can stand up in front of everyone and say autism. This is what it is. Anyone can do that. I mean, I could go on telly and talk about gardening if you gave me the right facts. I could say anything about anything, but it's the understanding. And I think that's where people on the spectrum need to start talking out about it. Autism understanding is right. I think you can't accept anything if you don't understand it. I genuinely believe, like for example, this is the issue with Islam in the world. We can't accept it because we don't understand it. And I think that's the problem. And I think that's the same with autism. There's no point for telling people, you've got to accept us. Because we'll know, because we don't understand. And I think that's why we need to focus on understanding now. I don't know what you think about that.
I think it's about all of it. All these words like awareness, acceptance, understanding. I don't think there's a way of choosing one over all the others. They mean such different things that it's difficult to compare them. But on the understanding that level, I think a lot of it is about, I'll put it this way. One of my friends, her only link to autism is me. And some years ago, I told her that I was on the autism spectrum, I had Asperger's, which was a type of autism. And then a couple of years later, I was working in a special school, and I met up with this friend again and said, well, I was basically describing a couple of the students, and she said, wait, you mean there are people out there with autism who don't talk? And this is not an ignorant friend of mine. She is very keen to learn about autism. I think, slight side note, I think there's a very, very important difference between someone who is ignorant and someone who is uninformed. I think if someone knows nothing about autism but is very keen on learning about it, that is literally the opposite of ignorance. So I never look down on people for not knowing about autism if they're quite keen on hearing our perspectives. I think if someone has the chance to learn and then chooses not to learn, that is ignorance. So my friend, she was uninformed, but certainly not ignorant. So I think the understanding's going to So we've got a new question.
Got a really good question there. Do certain words offend you? For instance, has autism versus autistic and special needs versus disabled versus challenged? Where do you draw the line? Like, what's your...
I know I'm supposed to be really fussy about which words you use, but honestly, I'm not. So I think it's the intent behind the words rather than the words themselves. I mean, one fairly successful picture made for Autistic Not Weird was a picture that said, "I'm an autistic person. I'm also a person with autism. Neither of those phrases offend me. Being told what I can and can't call myself offends me."
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I think, yeah, I as a person, I look at the law and I think, yeah, I'm autistic. The law says the government, it classes as a disability, which entitles you to rights. And at the end of the day, you've got to look at it. I mean, you don't have, you've got to think of it. Yeah, the law recognises it as one, and there are rules. And I agree, even though I'm high functioning, that there are occasions where those rights need to be informed, because I have a lack of understanding in certain areas, and that's where those rights need to come in. I don't like people coming up to me and telling me when people say you're challenging, I go, excuse me. I'm like, but to be honest with you, I'm autistic. That's all. There's no other way of saying it. Do you prefer being called a person with autism or an autistic person? Honestly,
I know you prefer Tom, don't you?
Exactly. I'd rather be called an autistic person than an arsehole.
Channel Boredom, was it? The name's just gone off the screen. No for me, but I'd rather be called by my birth name. Yeah, curious enough, so would I.
Autistic genius. I've been called autistic genius in the street. Someone said, "Are you autistic genius?"
Do you remember a few weeks ago when you got a message from a follower who was offended because you used the word genius in relation to autism? But people look for reasons to be offended. I mean,
I'll be honest with you,
I don't care. As long as you don't use the R word, I don't care what you refer to me, as long as you've got nice intentions.
I've had someone say, I find it so offensive that you call yourself a genius. It's arrogant and pathetic. And I say, it's a play on the stereotype. I'm taking the mick at myself.
Yeah, I always just assumed it was a play on artistic genius, because I heard the phrase artistic genius. I just always assumed it was that. I heard someone use the word autistic genius in a phrase, and it was never offended. It never intended to offend. It was just a laugh. Someone said it's a joke about himself, and like it just stuck in my head. And then I joined Twitter because it was the new thing at the time, and I just called myself Autistic Genius on Twitter. And years later, I thought I want to start a page, and I thought we'll go by the Twitter name and we'll just rebrand it. I think anyone who reads Autistic Genius and thinks that you are actually calling yourself a genius,
I never
has an understanding of tongue-in-cheek humour. And I'm sorry, but if guys like us can understand irony, then why can't you?
I love it when I put things on Facebook, and the autistic parents, take it really literally. Yeah. And I just go, oh God, they need to be diagnosed. When you put a thing on Facebook, they take it so literally. You think, jeez.
But
someone's trying to be a Welsh-speaking advocate. I like the sound of that.
That's Cymru. Please tell me you pronounced Cymru right. That's just about the only Welsh word that I can pronounce.
Channel Boredom. Stay in our good books. We might be able to help you if you're in Wales.
Yeah. Actually talking in Cardiff on April the 1st.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, that's as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They told me that they invite pretty much anyone to the...
Oh, yeah. And what's the other thing? The autism show? The 17th?
Oh, yeah. This thing that wants us to be in 3 places at once.
Yeah, that thing. Yeah, we've got to be...
But I don't think I've updated Autistic Not Weird yet, but basically myself and Tom are each talking at the London Autism Show, the Manchester Autism Show, and the Birmingham Autism Show, and that's all come up in the last couple of weeks. But
can't wait.
Yeah, way to go off topic. Anyway, yeah, conversations meandered again. Where were we?
We will know.
Oh, yeah, where's the defenders?
Everything. So just be patient. Yeah, what were we saying?
It's about words that are supposed to offend us. I mean,
that was the question.
If you insult, if you insult me deliberately, then yes, that will be hurtful. But if you call me an autistic person don't expect me to be offended just because a bunch of non-autistic people are offended by it on my behalf. I mean, I'm a big boy now. I can get offended all by myself if I choose to be. I don't like when other people want me to be offended by stuff when
exactly.
Really I should be the guy who gets to choose what I'm called. And I don't mind whether it's autistic person or person with autism. I have a friend, in fact, to be fair, I only have one friend on the autism spectrum who prefers person with autism. It's usually the professionals that prefer person with autism. But
right.
if I meet up with this guy in real life, I would call him person with autism because that's what he wants. Around people in general, I'll just use them interchangeably because I often struggle with my sentences enough as it is without having to pause and try and rearrange the words in my head to build up the least offensive sentence possible. But so I'll just use them interchangeably in the order that they come into my head. But if someone expresses a preference, then I will call them by that preference. Realistically, call them by their name, but you know exactly what I mean.
Was I ever offended by someone saying calling me autistic? And it was really silly, but I took real offence to it. And yes, they got their revenge. And basically what happened was I was at college studying media. And we had to do an assignment where we had to make like a TV show, like, you know, one of those ones, like the One Show, that kind of show, where they had presenters and they had those video inserts. So we had to make all the stuff and do a 30-minute show. And I was in charge on the live show to do the auto cue.
Yeah.
And apparently I was supposed to go at the person speed who was reading it, but really we had to keep to a time, so I was going at a steady speed. And I was moving it too slow or too fast or whatever. And the lad said, he thought it was funny. He said, oh, he's too autistic to do it. So then I was like, you are. So then when it went,
that was fun. Then
do you know what I did? Went to rehearsal, they went, okay then, and go. And I went, and he said, why are you doing the auto cue? And I said, I'm too autistic to do it.
Oh, wow.
And everyone sat there and went, no, he's right. You played that card, mate. Made your bed, doing it. And that's who I am. If you come at me, I play your own game.
Brilliant.
I've always been like that. That's probably why I don't get on well with bosses at work. But yeah, it's just like, all right then. You want to play? Let's do it. I don't. But it's a shame, really, that people do that sometimes.
I think a lot of the time people don't quite realise that they're doing it. For example, at the special school, I didn't talk about my Asperger's for the first 3 months I was there. There are two reasons for that. First of all, at the time, I was pretty shy talking about it. I know a lot's changed since then, but at the time I was. And secondly, I didn't want to burst in the room and say, hey, everyone, I'm autistic. I wanted to give them time to come to that conclusion themselves, which they would do because of their professional experience. It's better to let people come to their own conclusions rather than force conclusions on them from day one. But anyway, once I opened up and started talking about it, I did notice a couple of them when just after they'd set the class up doing something, they'd start talking to me with the same slow voice and same intonations that they talk to the autistic students with. And I was disappointed enough to not say, you know, I've got a master's degree and I'm a qualified primary school teacher, but I promise I'm not stupid. You don't have to talk to me this slowly. But these were great guys who are totally in it for the guidance of young people and everything. I think honestly they just didn't realise that they were being a little bit patronising. Just in their heads, that's someone who is autistic, therefore needs guidance, and that's how they chose to communicate, for better or worse.
Sorry, we've just been asked if we do vlogs on YouTube. I've just told them to search Autistic Genius on YouTube. Do you want to just say if you've got a YouTube channel or how to find it or whatnot?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is just called Autistic Not Weird, and it's got a couple of excerpts from some of the talks that they've given. And yeah, there's about 3 or 4 videos there, and about half an hour's worth of material, and that's it.
I'm all over YouTube like a rash. I never.
Yeah,
that's how I do things. I'm very different. He does the articles. He does this, the typing. I do the videos. That's how I work. Mm. Cool, man. So, by the way, this is great, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
My son is autistic. Cool. And
high five him for us.
He'll be as well. Right. Final thing. The future of autism advocacy is about being positive. What do you think?
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah, I've noticed that I never set out to be a positive autism advocate simply because my logical way of thinking said you can learn more from an honest person than you can from a positive person. So I only ever set out to be honest. But I've been told about how positive I am and everything, and well, either that means I'm just naturally positive as a person despite certain life experiences and certain reasons I've had not to be, or I really am just being honest. And in that case, that's actually quite revealing that that people interpret this just straightforward honesty. Yeah, fairly regular guy who thinks differently, and that is interpreted as being positive. I think people maybe expect me to be a bit more negative about autism. I'm sorry, but I'm not. I'm not negative.
Come across a lot of people who are glad that people like the pages like ours exist. In fact, someone's even said to me, apparently a lot of people who follow me also follow you, because apparently the pages, the way we do things, actually work really well together. I have no idea how, but they just do. And a lot of people are glad that I'm positive. I went into it to be positive. Initially, it started off with me ranting about things that happen to people with autism. Then it became very positive. I avoid negativity. I try to avoid it, but every now and then I share it. If I do anything negative in a video, it's normally like the music in the background's on. I'm like, yeah. Then the negative the music stops. And then I say it, and I'm serious. And then suddenly music comes back on. I'm like, way. So it's kind of like it's noticed, but it's like you've said it, bye, done.
Yeah, the negative stuff does need talking about. Otherwise, you end up with people just making the assumption that, oh wow, autism's a complete ride in the park, and then that leads to people saying, yeah, my son's autistic or my daughter's autistic. Oh wow, what a special gift. You don't.
That's a gift.
Positivity is so important, but you don't want it to lead to stereotypes.
I think to say autism's a ride when people think that, or mate, it's just silly. When you said about how people think, oh, when people get the idea that with us autism's easy or whatever because we're doing okay, I think this is stupid. Life's not easy. So let's,
that's not especially easy for non-autistic people either. But it just manifests itself in a.
I'm not going to be horrible about neurotypical, but I see neurotypical people panic over things that are just completely irrelevant to life, and I say, what on earth is you doing? Like, there are so many things that they worry about. Why is that an issue? Why? Like, Christmas, I won't even start. They didn't get me started on Christmas. But there are some things about these certain occasions that I just don't see as relevant, I think.
Oh, yeah. Another thing, don't get me started on the whole last potato thing either, about how... Yeah, and... if you want to hear me talk about last potato, go on my YouTube channel, because I've rant about the politics of taking the last potato there. I'll just say that if you want to please non-autistic people, take the second to last potato, because that's the last way it's socially acceptable to take.
I was always told to ask everyone.
Don't spread it, but guys, don't spread that, because then everyone start taking the second last potato, and then it'll be the third last potato that's the last acceptable one to take. And then
you know what I believe? You can't win. So there's no point in worrying about it. I don't care what people think anymore. As an autistic person who's learned the world the neurotypical way, I believe it's rubbish and I ignore it now. And I just don't care what people think anymore. There's no point in worrying about it. I don't care what anyone else says. I don't care. If I'm going to stand in public and go, because I'm anxious, I'm going to bloody do it. I couldn't care less. They go, why are you being weird? I say, why are you being normal? Why are you being like this? Why are you just standing there like this?
Why are you being your kind of normal?
Why are you standing there? People don't just do this. Why? This is normal. That's what you need to do. This is what people need to be different. Express yourself. That's normality. Expressing yourself and being different. Not.
You just remind me of something funny. There was this cartoon I saw once. It was a single panel newspaper cartoon, and it was a crowd of people who were all wearing sandwich boards saying "the end is nigh," and everyone was wearing these sandwich boards except for this one guy who was just walking along with a suit and briefcase. and one of the sandwich board guys looks at me and goes, "Weirdo." And I cannot think of a better analogy for what it's like to be autistic. All of these weird people pointing at you and saying, "Yeah, you're the weird one." But you're the guys who get all sensitive about the last potato and things that must happen at Christmas. And
do you know what we can do?
Sorry,
we can't win. Like people, I always, do you know what I love doing? At Christmas, I always say, when people go, "We must get a turkey."
Didn't we say we weren't going to get you started on Christmas?
Do you know what I say to people like that? I say, why do you need a turkey? Because it's Christmas. Show me in the Bible where it says we must have a turkey at Christmas. Show me in the Bible. And
Show me in the Bible where it says we need to celebrate Christmas. It's kind of like Lent. You don't give things up for Lent because it says so in the Bible. You just do it because it's an expression of your love for God and your commitments. That's true. Yeah.
But I just think actually turkey's stupid. I think they only have it once a year because they need to go because no one likes turkey. I just think it's a rubbish.
Turkey is unbelievably bland.
I would never have turkey at Christmas. Oh, no way.
Well,
anyway.
Well, yeah, we ended up talking about turkey. See, this is why you said don't get a start on Christmas. And then we ended up talking about the plan.
We've come up to nearly 50 minutes, so we're going to have to call it because I know what'll happen. We'll talk about nothing. This has been...
you mean like the blandness of turkey?
And it's actually been incredible. We've talked about autism, turkeys. What else? Anything else?
Well, the first 90% of the conversation has now gone from my head because that's just my attention span. But yeah, whatever it was, I know it was good, and I'm sure I'll remember it all when I watch the YouTube video.
Just to let you know, if you've missed this video, missed the end of it.
Huge apologies to Carmen, who has just joined, because we're just about to end. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, what I was about to say, sorry, Chris, is that if you've just joined us, catch the replay on Blab, or tune in to me Monday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning. I will have this on YouTube for you. 9 o'clock Monday morning, because that's my regular upload time. I'll have it there. Chris, when are you going to put it on your YouTube? You going to put it on your YouTube?
I'm not that far ahead, but...
that would be a yes. He will do it.
I definitely will do it. But by the way, thank you to Claire's just said you guys are inspiring. Oh, thank you.
Stop it.
I'm getting embarrassed now.
Inspiring? What am I? I'm saying it on Skype and people are watching. Why should I tune in? Why? Because clearly this is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, okay. He's there. We've got
Okay.
Okay, then. I'm going to go because I've got a life and a PlayStation. So it's been amazing to meet you.
I'm not the PlayStation. I'd like to think of God a life, but yeah.
I know. I said no, not PlayStation. Fine. I've got to watch Question Time, but that's another discussion. I will. So sad. Thanks. Finally, nice to meet you. Chris, this has got to be a regular thing. This
absolutely has to be a regular thing.
I will stay in contact. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your questions. Have a good evening.
And you. Take care, guys. Thanks again for watching. Bye.